Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Councillor Steve Pett. I'm the Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Economic Development. A few bits of housekeeping before we get started. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. There is live web streaming of this meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. Members of the public and press are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones. There's a small button you push when you're speaking, and again to turn it off. Do remember to turn them off when you have finished. Okay, we're going to do introductions, and we always introduce everyone who's here. So we're going to start with Lisa.
Lisa Gallagher from Democratic Services.
Jane Singh, Tourism and Marketing Manager and Acting Head of Museums.
Andrew Whitmarsh from the Museum Service.
Ross Fairbrother, General Manager of the D-Day Story.
Claire Looney, Partnership and Commissioning Manager.
David Moorman, Strategic Development Manager for Sports and Leisure.
Adrian Rosier, Parks Development Manager.
Page Finance.
Councillor Russell Simpson, Hillsey Ward.
Councillor George Fielding, Central South Sea Ward and Labour spokesperson.
Good morning, all. Any apologies for absence? I understand we've got apologies from Councillor Linda Symes is unable to join us today. Members, any declarations of interest? None? Okay. In that case, we're on to item 3. That's the Hot Wall Studio update. We'd normally have Harry Scott here to present that, but he's not available today. So the report's being presented by Claire Looney, our Commissioning and Partnerships Manager.
Councillor Pitt, thank you very much. The purpose of the report is to give an overarching summary of the work that the Hot Wall Studios have delivered over the last 12 months, plus also to make some recommendations going forward for how the Hot Walls could operate. So in effect, it has been a very successful and busy year for the Hot Wall Studios. There's a wide range of events and activities that have taken place, which have both helped and supported the artists with their creative industries development, but also continued to raise the awareness of the spaces, what they are purposefully there for, and how they are functioning and operating. The achievements, as outlined in 4.3, are quite extensive, with a range of opportunities for artists to increase their selling opportunities, as well as showcasing their work, engaging with the public through a variety of formats. The Hot Walls team, which is Harry and Amy, will continue to work with these and develop them further over the next 12 months, always looking for opportunities such as the Big Jubilee lunch at Cosham. We're hopeful in terms of how the big lunch activities take place this year. There'll be other opportunities for the Hot Wall Studios to go out and be out and about, as well as focusing on activity in that area. As always, they remain challenging spaces to work and not work in, but to manage and support, being both ancient scheduled monuments and scheduled monuments level 1. So they are complex, as we know from their installation, and it's imperative that the works are maintained as well as they can do in terms of the physical building assets. There are current works being looked at in terms of some issues we have on Grand Parade area wider, around tree roots and elements like that, and they are being looked at through different routes. In particular, though, this paper looks to address some of the issues which have been learnt by the Hot Walls team over the period of their installation since the Hot Walls came into initiation 5-6 years ago. It is important that we recognise that there needs to be a better support in place for a transition period for artists. So the proposal that is in forward in this paper looks at having, a transition period which also changes linked to the terms of the tenancy. Currently the tenancies have been extended to 6 years for some of the artists involved. What we're proposing is that they would be reduced to 5 years, and actually there'd be a 2-stage part to that tenancy. The first part, the initial 3-year period, would be a standard tenancy, but the second part would also be enabling a transitionary period with more support and different support to prepare the tenants as they move on to other spaces. We'd also recommend that replace the 2-tier model pricing with a single tier. We think that's clearer and more transparent, and also makes it equally fair for everyone. Currently, they are all, I should also say, included at the moment with the utilities, but obviously that is something with the increasing utilities cost that may have to be looked at going forward. Essential with all of this is making the spaces as accessible as possible. And that's why we also want to propose allocating at least 2 of the studio spaces to be shared spaces for emerging artists. Originally, one of the concepts with the Hotwell studio spaces had been to allow new and start-up businesses. However, we acknowledge that in the current climate, especially with the cost of living, it's very difficult for artists to take that step from perhaps doing their work in garages, back bedrooms, etc., to take on a studio space. So therefore, we felt that the opportunity for supporting emerging artists with the opportunity for a shared space where between 2 artists they could meet the commitment to the 30 hours a week occupation would be a good way forward, and allow that responsibility to be split between 2 people. We know they are a successful space. We know they are and have worked well with a number of artists going through. We know from the lack of turnover that they are popular spaces, the artists that take up those spaces. However, we recognise that creative industries is an essential driver in the city, but actually we need to look and go back to the nub of what these spaces were originally set up for, which was about start-up and supporting artists in their initial period of emerging from those initial spaces that they're occupying. It's important that they have that transition period built into the process going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. This has obviously been quite a complex issue, and it's changed and ebbed and flowed a bit with time because the pandemic, unfortunately, the timing of it wasn't great around these spaces and the implications that could have on the artists. I remember approving an extension to the tenancies probably about 3 years ago, and I believe that Councillor Dowling agreed another extension when he was sat in this seat last year. The bit of the jigsaw puzzle that's vital here is that, and I was very clear, because before I was a councillor, when I chaired the Culture Partnership, I actually sat on the steering group that brought the Hotwell Studios forward when Councillor Symes was a cabinet member, and I regularly made the argument, where's the move-on spaces? Where are the move-on spaces? Because it's not about the Hotwells themselves, it's about where they go to. We know that there's low-cost studio space, art space in the city, and we need more of that, and that the Hotwells fulfil a space in the ecosystem, but the move-on spaces are absolutely crucial. I know that we've got 2 artists here with us today, both of whom I know well, and there's been conversations about looking at potential spaces in Portsmouth Historic Dockyard, where I'm also a trustee, and we are pursuing that, but I don't think that is going to be the whole of the solution, and I have got the asset management team actively looking at other spaces around the city where we may be able to deliver appropriate studios for move-on space, so that we've got a through flow all the way through, so that you guys are not just doing the period at the Hotwells and then not seeing the benefits of that by having an appropriate space to move on to. So it's very high on my agenda. I am working in the background to try and get that to happen, and I'm hoping that there'll be some news in the imminent future that will be positive, fingers crossed, as long as we don't have property developers swooping in on various places and seeing that they can make more bang for their buck out of it, which is always a challenge. But it is a priority. There are several options in the pipeline that we're actively pursuing, and I hope to have more information about that for both members and the artists in the not too distant future, but we will continue to work with you over the coming months. Anything else from opposition spokespeople? Councillor Fielding?
No, just to say, I agree that there needs to be that move-on space. It's built into the occupancy of the Hotwell Studios. I think it's a good move to a situation where you have a 3-year lease and then that transition period, because it's giving that more support. Because I'm conscious that whilst support has been offered to the existing tenants, it is an unknown moving on to a new space in the city. And the more we can do to support them encourages them to be able to feel that they've got the confidence to move on from that key location. Also keen on the shared space. I think when we had the collective in one of the Hotwells, I think that was a great initiative. So more of that, where we can have that start-up initiative, the coming out of the the bedroom scenario into the studio space is to be encouraged. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, George. Russell?
Yeah, just to agree with what you said, anything that supports the arts, really. I've actually seen some similar kind of, not quite like the Hot Walls, but where you have a shared warehouse with lots of different artists. But actually, there's a couple in Chichester, actually, now thinking about it. But I think it's really, really good. We support as the best we can for as long as we can.
Thank you. And it is important to refer back to the original model, which was about keeping that support down there. So the work that Harry and Amy do, if we were to switch these around so they just became ongoing units, that support would have to be removed and the rents would have to reflect a commercial rent, and that's not in the interest of developing artists in the city. So it's that piece of the jigsaw puzzle, which is the what next, that does need resolving, and it's a bit frustrating that we didn't get on with this as quickly as we might have done for a whole bunch of different circumstances, but we need to move at pace, and I know that both Stephen Bailey as director and myself are actively having those conversations on a weekly basis, so thank you very much. So recommendations are accepted, and I'll come and meet you guys very soon and have a chat with you, with Councillor Atwell. So thank you very mumuch indeed, and thank you for coming along today as well. It's important, and also thanks for what you do, and congratulations on the success that you've had, Alison Carl, because the Hot Walls have been part of that success, and it's fabulous. So long may that continue. Okay, that moves us on then to item 4, which is an unusual one, the disposal of the Union Jack flag from the landing ship tank, I think landing craft, or landing ship tank, because it's not a landing craft tank flag, but Andrew will explain all. Andrew Whitmarsh.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. So just in brief, we were offered a Union Jack flag that at that point the donor said was flown on a landing craft at D-Day and had belonged to his adopted father, who was no longer alive. So we took it into the collection, and it subsequently came to light that it had actually not been on a landing craft that was a D-Day, but a landing ship tank, so a larger ship that was actually in the Far East rather than at Normandy, so it didn't fit with our collections anymore. I investigated whether other appropriate UK museums would be interested in acquiring it, and none of them were, and then established that there's actually a surviving LST landing ship tank in the US, which was LST 325. It's now called the LST Ship Memorial. So it's basically a museum ship, and that's actually at the site where the ship that the LST that this flag was flown on, where it was originally built. So I contacted them to ask if they would be interested to have it. They were very keen. The person who gave it to us is equally feels it's a good home. And yes, it seems to me that it's a good place to go to tell part of the British story of the use of these ships in the US at the site where it was built.
Thanks, Andrew. It's a really interesting little story, actually, isn't it? So, and a good outcome, hopefully. Councillor Fielding, any comments? No. Councillor Simpson?
Actually, when I first saw this, I thought it was such an unfortunate word, disposal.
Yes.
But actually, it's just being moved. But yes,
Yeah.
I mean, whatever's best to keep it, somewhere. So yeah.
Yeah, when anything's removed from the collection, disposal is the right word. But I do understand the sentiment. So that's approved, Andrew, and thank you very much. And be good to, I did mention this in the briefing, if we can get them to send us some pictures back when they've actually got it, and we can do a feature on that and prove that we didn't dispose of it literally, but we did pass it on to another museum, would be great. Thank you very much. Item 5 on today's agenda is Parks, Fees and Charges. Over to Adrian Rosier, the Parks Development Manager.
Thanks, Councillor Pitt. So this report, this is our annual report to seek approval for our parks, fees and charges. Majority of cases, these are proposed to increase in line with CPI. The site hire fees, they will increase in line with CPI. You'll notice the schedule has a separate set of charges for Victoria Park, and that's really to help support the lottery-funded project that's underway in the park currently, and for the activities and events that will help support the activities plan as part of that programme. The fees largely reflect the current other parks fees and charges, but they will have capacity just to flex with the demands of the project as that progresses. Fitness trainer charges, they increase in line with the inflation. In terms of sports charges, again, also in line with inflation. We've done some benchmarking with Hampshire Football Association just to see where we sit with our adult football pitch charges. And it's shown that we are the lowest charge of any local authority in Hampshire. It's something we'll look at as we progress with the development of King George V playing field and look to review charges at that point also. For Great Saltons Golf Course, that's still continuing to perform well. We've still got good numbers at the course post-pandemic, and it still outperforms the South regional figures, so we've got good membership there. The fees there for green fees and for season tickets, they've remained the same for 3 years, so this year there is a modest increase to the season ticket charges and a £1 increase to all the green fees. We recognise that at the golf course there's high senior citizen participation, and it's a good way to keep healthy and active, and so this year we have looked at offering a promotion that's really just to encourage those senior citizens to retain their season tickets by way of a promotion that will just keep their interest and for them, encourage them to keep their renewals going and remain season ticket holders. Thank you.
Who's our oldest season? Well, how old is our oldest season ticket holder?
I believe they're 92, 93.
It's quite impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be playing golf when I'm 93. Okay, thanks very much. Important to remember for any members of the public watching online that the increases in fees and charges don't disappear off into the council's budget. All of that money is reinvested into supporting parks and our open spaces to retain the standards that we have here, which outside independent organisations have said are of a high standard, and I think we'd all agree. And if we don't increase the fees and charges, we can't continue to maintain that in the way that we do and that the public expect. So it is unfortunate that this year we are seeing an inflationary increase that is 10%, but then that's applicable to pretty much everything across the board, and those of us on the political side are well aware of the reasons why. Members, any comments? George?
No, I mean, it's encouraging to some extent that we're keeping the rises to CPI levels because the costs of maintaining these facilities are increasing exponentially to some extent. So, no, I think it's encouraging that we're keeping things at an affordable level. As Adrian said, the fact that we're still at the lowest levels across the region or across Hampshire is very encouraging. And long may that continue as best it can.
Thank you. Councillor Russell Simpson. Nothing from you. Okay. Thanks very much. Yeah, I echo that sentiment, George. And, there are councils across the country that have, because they've been forced into plugging rather large budget gaps this year, have increased their fees and charges significantly above inflation, and we're not. So I think that's something that we should celebrate and thank Adrian and the team. So thank you very much indeed. All approved. Item 6, Museum and Visitor Services Fees and Charges. So more of the same, and over to Jane Singh this time.
Hi. Yes, so Portsmouth Museums have a range of charges relating to admission fees, venue hire, talks and tours, learning activities, consultancy fees, and printing and reprographic fees. And this report is to update members on increases we're making them and some new charges included for the first time. So we are looking to increase most charges by between 2 and 5%, which matches our previous increases, as we are concerned that increasing some of these charges at the current rate of inflation, given especially the current cost of living crisis, would reduce our competitiveness. Some are increasing more, so the guided tour charges, for example, at the D-Day Story will increase from £20 to £30, as they were previously not covering the costs, and charges that relate to staff time will increase by 10%, as we've seen that real rise in costs here. D-Day admission is going to remain as it is for now, but we will assess that as we move through the season, and if we feel the market can bear an increase, we will look at that because we do have targets to meet. New charges with an aim to increase income at Southsea Castle include a new charge for winter weddings and some small charges to enable the external hire of tables, tablecloths, chairs, for example. And we're also looking to set a charge for small market sales events that we've successfully trialled in recent years. Charges for museum staff time for professional talks and consultancy fees are also to be set, along with an extension to the range of learning activities we're able to offer. And finally, the image copying and reproduction charges are being revised and amended to better reflect today's use of images by broadcast media and generally on websites and social media, as they haven't been fully revised since around 2020.
Thank you very much, Jane. And I think it is slightly different with museum fees, etc., because we're in a market and we need to be sensitive to that market. I know, having run a live entertainment venue, that you can't charge what you want to charge. You have to charge what the market reflects, and that, you know, looking at ticket prices when there's a tour, you have to look at what the other venues are charging and make sure that you fit into that sensibly. So I think we're doing that here, and it is important to keep a watching brief on it, but I think this is proportionate at the moment. Councillor Fielding, any comments? Oh, Councillor Simpson, you want to go first this time. Why
Actually,
not?
very similar to before, really. It's just really good that we're keeping the prices low, keeping interest there as well, allowing people the opportunity to not feel like the raise in price is not too much. So I think it's really, really good that we're able to do that, and hopefully, you know, it can stay that way.
Fingers crossed. George?
Yeah, conscious that museums are a different thing. There has to have an income stream in order to maintain the existing facilities and also expand collections, etc. So I think it's encouraging that they are relatively modest increases. Worth also highlighting the fact that the Dickens Birthplace Museum, it remains free for Portsmouth residents. I think the more we can encourage people to go and see that, then that's a good thing. But generally, yeah, happy to see the increases being modest.
Thank you. And it is important, actually, to remember that the Museum and Art Gallery and Cumberland House Museum as well, these are free to enter. And especially in the middle of a cost of living crisis, when families are looking for things to do that are affordable, then going out and doing something that's literally free and is of really good quality should be highlighted and encouraged. And I know we are doing that through a range of different promotions and awareness raising around that, both through social media and through flagship and through websites. So now is a prime time to make use of amazing free facilities that we have in the city, but also recognising that D-Day Story is a particular case and therefore needs to make sure that it sits appropriately within the market. So thank you very much, Jane. That's all approved, and we're staying with you, I believe, for economic impact of museums, which is some good news.
Yeah, this is an information-only report. So in the, we provided information across all our museums to feed into the annual museum survey, and it covers the 21-22 financial year, so the kind of first kind of full period when we were back open after the pandemic. It's delivered across all of the whole of England, and the 717 museums contributed data in 2022, including the 6 that we operate. So from this, they estimate the economic impact of each museum, and I just thought it was quite nice to include an information report because the economic impact is substantial. So if you look at the second page, you can see the various sites, the number of visitors we had, and then the total economic impact that those visitors then add to the local economy. So just another element. It's not just about the the money they spend at the museum. It's about those visitors coming to the city and the impact they have. That's all.
Thanks, Jane. Members, any comments? No? George, no? Okay. Useful and interesting report, and we know the big numbers from Southsea Castle and D-Day Story and Cumberland House, but some of the sort of smaller impacts in there as well, from Charles Dickens' Birthplace, from limited openings, and Eastney Beam Engine as well. Lots of people don't seem to know that they can visit Eastney Beam Engine, but they absolutely can. Could you remind us of when it's open, Jen? Is it last Sunday of the month still?
It is open the last Sunday of every month except August and December. August because it clashes with Victorious, really.
Cool. And the council, with the support of all councillors, has had a significant investment down there over the last couple of years, so it's definitely worth going and have a look and meet the volunteers because they're a great bunch. So thanks very much for bringing that to us, to our attention. Always important to remember the positive economic impacts of culture and creative activity in our city, something that I mention at every single opportunity that I get. So thanks. Number 8, seafront accessibility. This report's here at the for an update request after I was asked by Councillor Fielding to make sure I brought this to portfolio, so I did. So over to Claire Looney, please.
Thank you very much. The report outlines both the measures we've put in place in the last few years and also continues to highlight some of the challenges we face with our very frequently moving shingle on the seafront. We are aware that seafront accessibility, the seafront remains a very popular place and lots of people want to use it. However, for some people, because of mobility issues, and that could be all sorts of mobility issues, getting onto the shingle can be very challenging. We have 2 sections of rubber matting, which are placed at Eastney and also opposite St George's Road, near the Coffee Cup. They have been in situ and provide a level of access onto the shingle. However, the rubber matting is very difficult to maintain because the shingle moves so much. It's quite hard to maintain that. However, we continue to do that and support access onto those 2 areas. Additionally, though, in summer 2020, we trialled a new wooden ramp, which we positioned between Southparry Pier and the Bryony. The wooden ramp was extremely successful. It moved, the weight of the ramp meant it moved less with the shingle, and when it did, because it was sectionalised, we were able to take up sections and reposition them. Originally, we had hoped that the ramp might be able to provide access for disabled swimmers to get into the sea. Regrettably, the trials that we had of the ramp weren't able to achieve this. Whilst we could get people into the sea, and they could have a great time in the sea, the challenges remained of the steepness of the gradient for people to get out. Therefore, it was decided to reposition some of the lower sections of the wooden ramp, which we did do to form a T section, if you like, or a cross section, which enabled people with disabilities or mobility issues generally, or people with buggies and families out, to go to the ends, so some of their family were sat on the shingle, and the people with the mobility issues were able to be or remain on the wooden decking. That has been extremely successful, and we anticipate that wooden decking going out again this summer. However, its exact location will be determined by the state of the shingle, which we'll assess after the winter storm period is finished and the shingle is a little more stable. We also need to take into account the coastal defence works and where they are, and also how the local conditions are. The other thing that we were able to implement was the range of drop curbs and disabled parking bays in the close association with wherever the mats were. So Eastney, additional dropped curbs and disabled parking spaces were put in, and we continue to assess that and make sure that whatever we put provision in, we've got those associated aspects going alongside it. We do hope that the Coastal Defence Works will help us find a solution for the longer term issue of enabling people with disabilities to get access into the water. We have continued to provide a range of solutions as we've seen them around the world, and we were literally looking for these things all the time and identifying and sharing them with the Coastal Defence team for their consideration. We also ensure that we maintain regular contact with other local authorities, and whilst there's nowhere with exactly the same issues we have, Brighton, with a similar shingle beach, is also another beach we have regular contact with. They don't have quite the sharpness of the gradient that we seem to have in sections of our beach. However, they have other issues and have trialled a range of other things which we've been watching to see how they have accessed and gone along with those. I'd be very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. And I know from regular visits down as another part of my portfolio to look at what's going on with the sea defences down there and how they're being constructed, that the works will inevitably change the profiling of the beaches over the next few years. So to do anything, in inverted commas, permanent at this point would be really, really unwise. We need to see how it all settles down and then keep working with the team to see where they feel the best and most stable place will be to try and access the water. But it's an ongoing conversation. I meet with the team managers down there probably once every 6 weeks on average, and it's always on the agenda. Members, any questions? George?
No, just thank you for bringing this report. I think we are conscious that there is a large community that want to be able to have access to the sea, that feel as though they have been overlooked in the past, but now we are going through the options that we have gone through and looking at other authorities struggling with the same issues. A solution will be found, and as I spoke to Claire yesterday about this as well, the fact that the sea defences, the conversations being had with the partners there, that a permanent solution once that the redevelopment has taken place should be encouraged. So yeah, thank you again for bringing this to the meeting. I'm trying to think where we are.
That's fine. And yeah, I agree. Russell?
Yeah, it's great to see this. I think really important for especially for wheelchair users to be able to use the space. I mean, I'm finding and fighting for the same thing around Fox's Forest and Hillsey Lines. Sorry to mention my ward, but it's just because we've had a lot of problems where a lot of users can't use it and they can't enjoy the forest and the surroundings. So I think it's really good that we support this the best we can.
Cool. And I believe in reference to the work at Hillsey, Sustrans are arranging to meet with you guys as ward councillors if they haven't already. Yeah, because that is absolutely what we want to try and achieve up there. There was something else I was going to say. What was I going to say? Yes, just worth noting that in terms of accessibility, the Changing Places toilet in the D-Day car park is now open, which is a welcome addition to the offer in the city, and the one in Central Library is currently a work in progress and is underway. So, and there's also a bid that was in for 3 more accessible Changing Places toilets in the city, and if we get that, I think it will take us to 8, which for a city of our size is not, I would say, enough, but is a decent amount of coverage, and we need to keep working to get more. Okay, thanks very much, Claire. We're on item 9 now, and that's over to our D-Day story manager, Ross Fairbrother.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. So this is an information-only report to provide an update on marketing activity completed by the D-Day story team and other activity that we've also done to raise awareness of the museum and hopefully drive interest and footfall to the museum. So in terms of traditional marketing, following the opening of the landing craft, we ran a digital outdoor campaign to focus on the unmissable LCT, which initially focused around Portsmouth because the landing craft opened during COVID where travel time was limited. And that opened up to locations along the M3 and A3 corridors to within a 2-hour drive time of the museum, which was successful. More recently, we focused on promoting the embroidery because as the LCTs become more established, we want to remind people that the embroidery is there, and it's also a fantastic thing to be able to visit as part of the museum. We also, in summer of 2021, ran a radio campaign on Wave 105, which also had a significant number of impressions, which was also successful. Historian Dan Snow very kindly filmed a video for us, and that received a good number of hits online and also a high number of click-throughs to our website. We were also able to show that on the big screen just outside on Guildhall Square. And following that, we've also recently signed a partnership with Dan Snow's organisation History Hit, which produces a significant number of podcasts each week. But the partnership that we've agreed will result in a number of social media posts and History Hit promoting the D-Day story on their social media channels. And they have a significant number of followers, so that will result in a good promotion for the museum, and there is minimal cost for that, or there's no cost at all, which is fantastic for the museum. Outside of paid marketing, the team has also worked to increase our coverage on other media channels. So the museum has been featured locally on Radio Solent a number of times. So we managed to feature on a Saturday morning treasure hunt show where the LCT was featured as an object, a rather large object. The listeners needed to work out where it was, and then I was interviewed about the museum, and also an artist who ran a temporary exhibition last autumn did an interview about the museum, and we know from speaking to visitors that also drove visits as a result, which is fantastic. A number of the team have written magazine articles about the museum, and of course last spring we had the royal opening of the LCT, which received lots of national media coverage as well. We've worked to increase a number of ticketing partnerships, which is all about increasing brand awareness of the museum. So we were part of the National Lottery's Days Out campaign, which was launched as COVID, the impact of COVID was reducing, and that resulted in a significant increase in ticketing revenue. We also feature on the Get Your Guide ticketing platform, which results in a significant number of ticketing revenue each year. And this year we've looked to work with a number of hotels and transport providers, both around the city and nationally, to have joint tickets, which is again all about increasing awareness of the D-Day Story brand. We offer a flagship offer for a number of months each year, which is all about offering a discount to local residents, and that's proved successful. And this year we've extended the time period which that's available, so that's currently available at the moment. Social media is a really important part of what we do. We've got a very active presence on there. And during the lottery project to transform the D-Day Museum, we hired a consultant to really look at what our social media channels were doing to make sure we're reaching the right audiences, and the content that we put out there is absolutely maximising the people that we reach, and talking about the right messages that the museum is saying. This time last year, we completely relaunched our groups offer. So groups visiting the museum is a really important part of what we do. So we created a new offer that was talking to not only general interest groups, but also specialist interest groups as well, whether people were visiting for just 2 hours or for longer. And that's proved really successful in increasing the number of groups that have visited this year compared to last year. The museum's also received accreditation status from Visit England. We won the Creative Cultural Visitors Business of the Year at the News Awards last year, and that backs up our really positive ratings that we get both on TripAdvisor and on Google, which I think is really important in people wanting to come and visit us, seeing that they're going to have a great experience when they come here. And finally, we produced a video with our partners at the National Museum of the Royal Navy talking about the landing craft, the project to restore it and what visitors think about it. And that's received over 83,000 views on YouTube, with lots of comments from people about what a fantastic project it was to restore it, and comments from people around the world wanting to come and have a look at it, visit Portsmouth and see it as a result, which I think is fantastic in coming to want to see our museum. So yeah, a variety of activity in raising awareness of the museum. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ross. I was actually with, I bumped into Dominic Tweddle and John Rees from the NMRN yesterday, and we were discussing the landing craft tank project in particular, which obviously we partnered with the NMRN on. They were both saying what a fantastic project it had been and how pleased they are of the outcome of the partnership that we had with them. And I think that's absolutely the case. And D-Day Story goes from strength to strength, and the profile that it gets. And thank you also to Jane and the destination team for the marketing side of things and raising that profile and working with you and the team down there. Great outcomes and great coverage for a fantastic museum. Councillor Fielding, anything?
No, just to congratulate basically the success story of the D-Day Story and LCT. Is it's an amazing asset for the city. We should do more to highlight the fact that it's unique in the sense that it's the only dedicated museum in the country relating to the D-Day. And obviously for anyone watching, I encourage them to go along to visit it. The flagship offer still remains until the end of February, so you'd be able to get 40% discount. I was fortunate enough to go to the museum as part of the Holocaust Memorial Day, and would encourage my partner and myself to go down again to visit the exhibitions, because it's just outstanding down there, and I can not give enough praise of what we've achieved there.
Thank you very much. Russell?
Sure, just well done to the team. Please visit if you are watching. I think it's really important that we keep these things active.
Thank you. Just a final comment from me. We've recently waved goodbye to Jane Mee, who was our head of museums. She's gone off to enjoy retirement, and we wish her all the best. She worked really closely with me on the LCT project, and she put a huge amount of effort into it. And I know she had a lot of passion around seeing D-Day Story emerge from the old D-Day Museum and thrive and do really well. So best wishes to Jane, and thanks for all she did for Portsmouth City Council while she was here. And Ross, thanks to you and the team for your ongoing work in making D-Day a success.
Thank you.
Okay, final item today is item 10, and that's the update on the Bransbury Park Leisure Centre. David Moorman, please.
Good morning. So the project is approaching the end of REBA Stage 2. With the most recent facility mix, this will be the third time we've reached REBA Stage 2. Previous designs were unaffordable in current economic climate, and so I'm expecting a final REBA Stage 2 report at the end of the month, and following which we will consult with the public on the REBA Stage 2 designs in March. An architect-led design team has been assembled to bring us to REBA Stage 3 and a planning application, and we expect that to be submitted in late summer. Roughly speaking, with the timelines we're looking at the moment, subject to planning approval and affordability, we would start construction early 24 and aim to complete and open in mid-25. The facility will provide a replacement for Eastney swimming pool, but a pool that is actually 25% larger, and along with the learner pool, this represents a 75% increase in water space compared to the current facilities at Eastney. There'll be modern changing facilities, new two-court sports hall, which combined with other sports facilities that are due to come online at a school later in this year, will eventually provide a replacement for Wimbledon Park Sports Centre. We know from latent demand studies on more than one occasion there is demand for a new gym, and so a 50-station gym will be included. That will subsidise the operation of the swimming pool, meaning that it's expected that the centre will continue, it's projected to return a surplus on revenue modelling, including up-to-date energy costs. We're still working through the potential for a GP surgery to be part of the design. The NHS are funding that feasibility work and twin-track design process, and we're meeting with the NHS estates team and the GP practice regularly. My hope is that we will be able to find and make a decision in March, potentially early April, on whether that can go ahead. I'm reluctant to pursue twin-track design any longer than needs be because it costs money, and one of them will inevitably not be done. So total project cost currently is looking at 16.9 million. The budget has been adjusted because prudential borrowing capacity has reduced since interest rates rose late last year, and so we do currently have a funding shortfall of 2.4 million. This can be met by a grant from Sport England and potentially also from the Youth Investment Fund. I'm in continuous dialogue with Sport England and we're working with them towards a grant application. I should be meeting them on the 22nd of Wednesday, 22nd of February to continue those discussions. The only real alternative to these proposals, and I've been asked to refresh that, is to build a swimming pool, a standalone swimming pool. Now, that could obviously be at Eastney swimming pool site at the moment. It could potentially be anywhere where the land will fit it in. I think it's really important to note that whilst that would provide capital cost saving in terms of what we're building, we would not be building the same. We would not have the sports facilities or the gym, and we would require revenue subsidy of I've projected at £123,000 a year, and that would not address the need for the gym, not address the need for the indoor sports provision. So in conclusion, the project is progressing well, remains viable, dependent on securing funds from Sport England.
Thanks, David. You were far more polite than I'm going to be about one of the reasons why we've been struggling to make sure that we can get to a point where this project remains financially viable. The totally irresponsible behaviour of Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng back in September, which crashed the markets and raised interest rates, has not just impacted this project, but every single project this council and every council across the country is trying to deliver important infrastructure for local residents, and more important than anything else, local jobs that will help to rebuild the economy and get us back growing again. So the outfall from that event continues to ripple through. I think it's safe to say that we were probably we would have been slightly further ahead than we are now if we hadn't had to revisit this again after September and look at what options remain available to us. And even more significantly, the rise in raw material costs that we've seen since Brexit and the impact of the pandemic, and then with the war in Ukraine, have also not just for us, but on infrastructure projects right across the UK, really stressed them. So the fact that we are in a position where we are able to move forward with this project with reasonable confidence that we can achieve what we always said from the very beginning we would, which is to look for a contribution from Sport England and perhaps a small contribution from the Youth Investment Fund is, I think, very pleasing and to be welcomed. And it's also worth noting that there are a couple of costs within that 16.9 that we continue to interrogate regularly and try to bring down. So I think we're in a good place compared to where we could have been. And I do note that councils all across the country, even those that are delivering new leisure facilities as part of levelling up funding that they've received from the government, are struggling to be able to deliver those projects. And there is every chance that Levelling Up Fund round 3 will be removed in order to backfill those projects. So, you know, in that overall landscape, given where we've been and where we are, I think we're in a pretty good place to deliver a new leisure centre and new leisure facilities as we promised we would in the southeast of the city. Okay, Councillor Fielding, any comments?
No, I would echo what you say regarding the pressures that are affecting the project as a result of the economic state that we've been left in by the maladministration of the Conservative government. I am conscious that there is still a shortfall in the project which is subject to getting successful funding from Sports England and a successful bid from the Youth Investment Fund. We were always going to be in the situation where we would require funding from Sports England, so it is imperative that whatever criteria they have are met to avoid any black hole in the project. But yeah.
And as David alluded to, we are meeting with them regularly, and at the moment they're being very positive. So, Russell?
Yes, it's such a shame we've been put in such a difficult position. I mean, I'm looking here at saying, you know, the possibility of adding a GP surgery. You know, we absolutely need more GP surgeries, and I think I really hope we end up getting it. I'm still talking to many residents that are struggling to get appointments, etc., etc. So I feel that this is really important that this happens also.
Yes, thanks. I completely agree. We could have concluded REBA Stage 2 and then moved on to REBA 3 to accelerate the project. But to do that would have meant ruling out the GP surgery. And although officers have had early conversations with GP services in the area about whether they would like a footprint within the new building, when we first started on this a couple of years ago, latterly, their priorities have changed and they've been through the mill a bit as well. I think it's fair to say they changed their view and they did want to look at it and see whether it was feasible. And I thought, given the backgrounds to everything and where we are around pressure and access to good quality facilities where we can place GPs, not just GPs themselves, but a modern environment that's going to deliver good quality service to local residents, it was definitely worth the investigation. We will have to make a decision fairly soon, so I'm hoping that the NHS is going to be ready to move, because what we can't do is postpone this indefinitely because it'll have inflationary pressure on the project. So they will need to make a prompt decision, but it's welcome that they've allocated that amount of resource to be able to look at the feasibility of it. And I know that David and the design team have been working at pace to make sure that we're losing the minimum amount of time possible. But if we could deliver GPs and health facilities in there, along with the pool facilities, the gym, etc., the health and well-being implications of the project will be massive, and that is also a big tick in the Sport England box. So we continue to develop this as fast as we can, and when we've got another update, we'll obviously bring it back to you. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for being here today. Thanks to all the officers who presented, the artists who joined us earlier on, and those who have been viewing online or may yet do so. So Lisa, thanks for supporting the meeting, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.